Hello, and welcome to No Wrong Choices, a podcast about the adventures of life, where each episode features a dreamer who chased an idea or a vision, made it happen, or are on their way. Along with Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea, I'm Larry Samuels. If you've been enjoying the show, please be sure to follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so that you're alerted when a new episode is live, or say hello by visiting our website at NoWrongChoices.com, or check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching for No Wrong Choices. Today's episode features actor, writer, and director Nick Job. Larry Shea is a once aspiring actor and good friend of Nick's. You're the perfect person to set up this conversation for us.
Yeah, this goes back to like 2005 when we're all working at Sirius, doing The Fellas way back when. And I remember Jay Thomas, the late great Jay Thomas, is working at Sirius as well. And we became pretty good friends, and he really became my mentor. And I remember asking his advice about how I could become a better radio talk show host. And the first thing he says to me is, you need to improve your improvisation, your on-air presence. He's like, get into an acting class, go figure out who you are, and it'll help with everything. I end up studying with one of the best teachers in New York City, and Nick Job, who's been studying acting his whole life, is in this class with me. And we end up pairing up as scene partners, and he becomes one of my best friends, truth be told, because we were working on these great plays, Long Day's Journey into Night, etc. And you just become so close, and he became such a big part of my life. And his career really took off. I mean, I ended up going in a different direction, but it did help me with my radio stuff. But to watch his career blossom and take off from a distance, it's just been a real pleasant thing to behold. And Nick is really going to give us some insight into what it's like to be in this business. It's not easy.
I've had this opportunity to meet Nick a few times through you. Obviously, he's your very good friend. And the one thing I've always taken away from my meetings with Nick is that he's just a very cool guy. And I just don't mean that he's just a very down to earth person. He's got like this really, what I would say is like this inner calm. And he's very California. He's a very Zen dude. And he's got a really interesting story. And that's what I think will come across when we have this opportunity to speak to him.
Now, he's very cool, very California, and with that, here is Nick Job. Now joining No Wrong Choices is a hardworking actor, writer, and director, plus a really good guy that we've known for a long time. I'm, of course, referring to Nick Job. You might know Nick from his appearances in Mank, Billions, Blind Spot, and so many others. And he's also written or directed some great shorts. Two of them are The Last Night and Protect Us. And also, he recently shot a new pilot for HBO Max that I think Nick will get into a little bit later on, so I don't want to tease that too much off the top. So with that, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, full disclosure, because Nick is my buddy, so I need to jump in here real quick. This is about chasing your dreams, this show. This show is about pursuing your dreams, finding that thing that makes you tick and going after it hard and heavy. And we thought Nick would be a great guest on the show because there's nobody who works harder. There's nobody who's more dedicated. I know because I was alongside him doing this for years and I quit because it was so hard. I was like, enough of this. No, but it's acting, directing, writing. This kind of art is based on rejection. And I think it's a perfect guest for the show because what Nick, you're going to tell us is what it's going to take for somebody to break through this creative process and become the artist that you strive to be. You're hardworking, dedicated for sure, but you're also a student and a teacher. And I think the thing that separates you in your acting career is your thirst for learning, right? And that's kind of how we met. Back in 2007 or 2008, we both went to the same acting teacher because we were looking for those same things in life. And I know your journey started a lot earlier than that. So hopefully you can share with us your journey, how you got into acting, how you got into writing, your goals, your dreams, and how you're trying to get there and how you got there in the past. So welcome. I know that's long-winded, but welcome. And share with us your secrets because this is a tough field, man. What would you say right off the bat about why you wanted to get into all of this art and creativity?
Well, first off, thanks for the double introduction. That was
and chaos.
That.
I will. Once I ask you a question, Nick, I will also give you an introduction as well. So
yes,
we'll just do all across the board.
I was waiting for Tushars as well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's that old thing where they say, you don't choose it, it chooses you, or the thing where they're like, hey kid, if you can do something else, do something else. And I just think it was one of those kind of things. When I was a kid, I guess I wanted somebody's attention. I wanted to be seen, and that I remember. Oh God, I haven't even thought of it this way. I remember when I think I was maybe in sixth grade, and I got into the musical because of the girls, of course, right? Because I was like, oh, there was some pretty girls in that class, and I did the musical, and I was bad. I was not good, and I thought it was cool to do it, but then when time to get up on stage, I was like, I didn't want to actually try. My buddies are here. I don't want to like try at this. And then, I was in high school. I was playing football. I was not large. I'm still not large. And I was playing freshman football, and I shaved my head. I was like, oh, it was tough, And then I was also in this musical theater class, right? Because I think it was, I don't know why. I was like, maybe there's something here. And I realized that I wasn't great at football naturally. I mean, I was small, but I could sing. I was like, oh man, people were responding to the sound of my singing voice. And I think that was the beginning of it. I was just sort of like, here's something I might be good at. And that opened up. I did a bunch of plays in high school, and yeah, that just kind of became something that I was I don't know. I just was like, I'm good at this thing. And then I don't know however many years later, 30 years later, here I am.
Nick, I know that, and having obviously met you before and having known a little bit of your backstory, I mean, you come from a football family, right? Your parents have been in the NFL, have worked for, I believe, for the Rams for many years, and you said that you played some football yourself, but you could have gone down the other pathway and gone through to the NFL, but you chose to go to acting. Why is that?
Well, I don't think I could have played in the NFL.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying gone the route like the front office.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah, my grandfather worked for the Bills for quite a long time. He also worked for the Rams. My uncle was a scout for the Patriots. My mom was with the Rams for a long time. I thought about that, and I guess, I guess this is sort of everywhere in my story. Like, it's a big part of my story. I felt like has been just defining myself as something different than my family system, like that initial desire to just kind of rebel. Like, I want to do my own thing, Sure, I think that was probably on offer for me to, get into the sort of the scouting assistant or the coach's assistant sort of route. But yeah, I feel like from a young age, I really wanted to just sort of develop my own thing.
So with that, what were the steps that you took? So you discovered it in high school, you took your classes, you started to think to yourself, well, maybe I can get the girls, maybe this is going to be interesting. Like what was the inspiration? What was the first thing you did to put yourself out there and to try to move the train out of the station, so to speak?
Well, I think the process I think what it was when I first started doing any kind of performing, I think I probably put on some kind of voice and some kind of, some act. And when I got into college acting, it was revealed to me that great acting is actually just being yourself. And I didn't know who the hell I was then, still working on it, but I was like, oh, and I saw it. I was like, oh, I don't have to worry about, I did a couple plays, and, I don't have to worry about if I have a cold when the night of the show, because my character has a cold. Like, I just get to be me. What I realized, like, slowly, like, there was this, quite frankly, there was a bit of a healing journey in acting. Like, acting became a journey to myself, to deepen kind of who I was more and more. And I think that's when the quote unquote bug really took, is that I was like, oh, it's just more of me.
So, Nick, so was there one moment, like whether it be in college or even now in your journey, even now in your professional life, where you had said to yourself, not only is it the profession I want to pursue, but this is the profession I can be successful in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I'd been in New York for a while doing theater and, doing some cool stuff. And, and I remember a friend of mine saw me in a class, and I'd taken a number of classes. I took all the classes, all the study with all the great teachers for, a long time. And a friend of mine saw me in a class. He's like, how come how come you're not doing TV? He's like, you're a great actor, man. You need to be auditioning for TV and movies. And I was like, I don't really know how to do that. And I did like a casting director workshop class in New York. And and my friend, again, along that lines of just being yourself. And because I'd done a lot of deep acting work, I knew how to be myself. And the very first casting director class I was in, the casting director, she called me in to audition for the Blacklist. Like, it was like I didn't have an agent or anything. She just emailed me, and she was just like, hey, can you come in? And I got pinned for that very first TV job I'd ever auditioned for.
I think I remember that. Were you like walking through the streets and you were following somebody around or something like that?
Yeah,
you were like the creepy guy.
That was Blind Spot.
Oh, okay.
That was because that office actually got that office. I mean, the thing about it is, people tell you this is such a relationship business. That office liked me so much. I got pinned for the Blacklist, which essentially means it's probably between you and one or two other people. They're pinning your dates. And then they cut that role from it was a small kind of role. They cut that role from the show, but I kind of felt like, and I remember she said to me, she's like, our office really likes you. So they just kept trying to bring me in, trying to get me my first TV job after that. They had me in for kind of all their shows. And I think they had me in for Blind Spot maybe 3 or 4 times before I, booked that first sort of Blind Spot thing, that following guy or whatever he was.
Did they ever tell you like what it is that attracted attracted them to you, or attracted you to them?
I don't think they ever did. I mean, I think it was just that, like I said earlier, I think that the wrong route that people go down is they think they need to do more. They need to become more. More workouts, more whatever it is, better teeth, whatever the thing is. And I think that someone told me that the path was just a deeper into you. And so I think I was just a normal me. There wasn't a lot of added. I wasn't adding a lot of sauce onto whatever I was doing.
I'm glad you talked about the relationships, though, with that particular agency, because I think that's super important when you're talking about this kind of work. The biggest, scariest jump that I feel I looked at when I was facing, my acting career was going from the learning, working stage of working on being a good actor, a great actor, to going on auditions and getting rejected at every single turn. It's literally a minefield of rejection. And for someone like an actor who you're trying to build yourself up, you're trying to build up your ego so that you can put yourself out there and be exposed and be judged, essentially. For such a theater of rejection, how hard is that leap?
I mean, I think it helps to see when you have a chance to see the whole process from start to finish, you realize how little it has to do with you and your performance. I think when you get that perspective, at first it was like, you just put all of your emotional eggs in that basket, and you start, your mind starts telling you the story. You're like, oh, if I get this one, then maybe I'll get that next one over here. And you just start, you do the whole, but it never, ever goes the way your brain thinks it does. So I don't know. I think that when you can see the whole process, that so much of casting has to do really with a look, the sound of your voice, things that you just could never fundamentally change. Once you kind of get to that phase, you're like, hey man, they weren't picking up what I was putting down. And you stop thinking about it like you're being rejected. And you start thinking about it like, oh, somebody was just, I had a mentor once that was like, when you go into an audition, consider just that you're being of service. And when you're being of service in that audition, sometimes it means that what you're doing is you're showing the casting director who they don't want to cast.
Interesting.
Like, oh, wow. You're showing them like, okay, we know we don't want someone like that. Like that's the help you're doing for them for the day. So I think when you can get perspective on it, auditions come in bunches for me, and I'll tape them, and that's it, man. And then I'm like, I'm off to whatever the next thing is, and I think once you do a lot, it becomes less a value judgment, and it's more just like
It's funny. I think back to when I first came to New York in the early to mid 90s. My My first roommate was an actor, and she still is an actor. I don't know if the name Kylie Vernoff means anything to you. She's been in a million different things, and she was in Red Dead Redemption. She was one of the evil people, I think. I never played the game, but anyway. It was really fun and interesting living with her because I would come home, 6 o'clock, whatever it was, and I'd press play on the answering machine at that point. There would be 19 messages. One of them would be for me. 18 would be for her, and she'd be running all over the city going, like it was madness all the time. And I don't know how many times I role played with her in our apartment to prepare her for the next day. But to your point about the confidence and the comfort, et cetera, like she had a process, and she put on the outfit, she went here, she went there, she did whatever, and she was incredibly strong, and she made it. How long did it take you to get to the point where you had that process, you had that confidence, and you kind of had the rhythm that set you up for success?
I mean, I think for me, I was lucky because a lot of that foundation was laid, in classes with really good teachers working on they're always like, work on the great plays. And I'm like, oh man, what's this going to do when I have, 2 lines of dialogue in a TV show? But I feel like I had such a process for how to just attack script that when it finally came time to start auditioning for TV and movies and things of that nature, it really at that point had just become second nature. Like I just knew, and again, it's like the older you get, the more experiences you have, you know how to push your own buttons, you know how to push your own emotional buttons when you've pushed them a bunch. And so it's not, I do tapes all the time where there's an emotional scene, and I'll tape with a friend and how do you do it? You get misty, I don't know. I think years of pushing your own emotional buttons, which who knows what that does to your psyche overall. It becomes second nature. I don't, when I get an audition, I don't put a whole lot of process thought into it.
It's funny because this is why I quit, right? Because I couldn't do what he just did, which is basically just be so well practiced, so well schooled that you didn't have to think about it. Nick, I felt such an obligation to, first of all, I had a disconnect between my mind and my body. And as an actor, you can't really have that. But I also had these obligations to the characters that I had to keep thinking about and reinforcing over and over again. And then very simply, the third biggest bugaboo for me was I couldn't memorize all those freaking lines, man. It was difficult for me to process all of the emotional and physical stuff with a character and remember my lines at the same time, because you have to remember the size of a play or the size of a movie or a TV show, whatever it might be. That's a lot of lines. Sometimes you're given monologues, long, lengthy things. I mean, how do you have this obligation to character, separation of body and mind, and the detail of I know everything?
Well, ideally, you're not thinking about anything, right? Ideally,
this is why
ideally you don't think. I mean, you just don't think. I mean, the last thing I did, there was a lot of moving parts in that. There was some stunt play. There was just a lot of moving parts, and it was super heightened emotional. And I remember they flew me out for it, and I was in my hotel room for a lot of days leading up to my day when we were shooting this thing, and I was going over it in my mind and and choices and then I got there and I was like, what the hell was I worried about? We did 3 takes and I'm like, what was I worried about, man? It was just when I'm working, we did this one section for a long time. When I'm working, there's just not a lot of thought. It's not, and I'm sure you don't know if it's been mentioned or not, but I'm also I'm also an avid meditator, so I think that probably helps as well. But it's just I don't think that much anymore. Less and less thought as I get older.
How necessary would you say taking classes are in your early development? Is it necessary at all?
Again, I think for me, and it's sort of a theme. There's a lot of ways to get into your stuff. Can we curse on this?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes.
There's a lot of ways to get into your personal shit, right? There's therapies, a lot of different ways. But getting into a class where you're playing like a character and, you're playing like Eugene O'Neill, you're going through like some deep family, like it's a real healing. So for me, I think some people, my old acting teacher, which I love, used to say, you didn't come to the arts because you had a great upbringing. That was his thing. Like, I think some people come to the work. You hear stories all the time about people who are like, they never took an acting class. I think somebody were watching Bob Odenkirk or someone said that.
Bob Odenkirk. Yeah, we were watching.
They never took an acting class. But I think some people come to acting with a real deep knowledge of themselves. And to me, that's the work. So I needed the acting classes to get closer to me, to get closer to who I was. So for me, I definitely needed it. But I don't know. I mean, there's definitely technique there, but I think it was also just like accepting who I was, everything about myself. Like that's the work. And the people who come into the, you hear all those mythical stories, and Johnny Depp didn't, or maybe it was somebody didn't take many acting classes. I just think those people just were real in touch with who they were, and they didn't need all that working on play processing to sort of get there.
As you talk about the self-discovery and sort of getting into the flow of who you are and what you bring forward, would you describe yourself as a particular type of actor, a method actor, a character actor? I don't know what term I should throw out there, but is there a type of character or actor you are?
I mean, I think, I hate to like toot my own horn. I think I can do a lot of different versions of that.
Yeah.
I can work outside in. If I throw on an accent, I'm different immediately. Even I'm here in New York for 4 days, and there's already more New York in my voice than there was when I got off the plane from LA. I moved around a lot as a kid, so there's a lot of adaptability in me. So I do think I have a little outside in, which is probably close to the method.
And what does outside in mean? Just for those of us who don't know.
Well, if you put on something, if I put on a different physical trait, if I don't know, stick my gut out, or I turn my elbows out a little more masculine, a little more whatever, then I'm going to be a little bit different. Sometimes I work like that. The thing I just did, I played basically a mobster, which if you know me and you see me walking around, it's not really my vibe. I just had access to it because I worked on some of those kind of characters. I lived in New York for a long time. So I do think there's a bit of like, sort of this outside in process for me at times.
I kind of want to change directions with you just a little bit, Nick. And I know that, there's an old saying in golf that you drive for show, but you putt for dough. And I know that you have that you are a writer and you've done some directing, obviously, of shorts. So now that you've obviously put your foot into the other aspects of the job, which do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy acting more? Do you enjoy the creation portion of it? Writing more? Do you enjoy directing more?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, writing is still sort of the thing that gets me the most. I mean, I still love acting, but writing is still the thing that I'm still just getting better at. I think writing, it still has so many levels to it. Like a mentor of mine in writing, he said, the hard thing is when you come to LA as a writer, you're basically trying to sub into the all-star game against all-stars because your scripts are going up against the people who've been here for 30 years.
Yeah.
So he was like, you don't want anybody reading your first 5 or 10 scripts. You don't want anybody looking at those. You want people reading like your 13th or 14th. And him and I talk all the time. And I'm always like, dude, that's the best advice you ever gave me. But like writing to me, and I coach writers. So one of the things, like, it is truly this sort of never ending staircase up. There are so many, I think people who go do the master sommelier test, I think they realize wine has an infinite amount of knowledge. You can learn about wine forever and never learn everything. Writing to me kind of has that. There's so many elements and to it in terms of it's just like this staircase. So I like that about it. And again, you talked about, Larry, how I like to learn. I like that I can there's something I can just keep getting better at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I interviewed Billy Bob Thornton a million years ago, and one of the questions I asked him was, what advice would you give to a young actor trying to get into the business? And his answer was, write characters for yourself. So in that sense, going into the writing tip, do you find that now as a writer, the way you're developing helps you in your acting work, or does it supplement? Because one of the things I think you've been brilliant at is not just counting on your acting to pay the bills. You're branching out into shorts and production and writing and workshops and acting. And I have to think that those all kind of help each other.
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, it is, you're just kind of, you're coming at it from all these different directions. In a weird way, I feel like, and I think mentors of mine would tell me I could probably do less of this, but I think I compartmentalize acting and writing. Like, I think of them very differently in terms of the skill sets. They just exist in different you were talking about, Larry, earlier, the disconnect between the mind and the body. In writing, you can rent space in your brain. It's not like, I need to go get into my body. Like, writing is a lot of brain energy. It's just like, I get usually my best writing ideas from deep, long meditations, but it's still sort of the mind. So I just feel like they come from different parts of me in a way. I can see how they connect, and they teach me things about each other, but they're compartmentalized in my internal space.
So if that's the case, would you prefer to be a writer, or would you prefer to be an actor?
I think I would prefer to write, because I like the idea of creating the entire world. I like this idea of, like, maybe it's, I don't know, God complex thing.
Yeah, maybe it's control. Maybe it's the idea of control.
Yeah, I like the idea of being able to go up to this high level and oversee like a whole arc, a long arc of stories. I really, really like that. And another thing I like is that in writing, especially if you do it well, you can get across your personal sort of statement and mission statements in ways that people might not see. You can hide, you can create allegories essentially for things you want to say about the world. And to me, my father is a carpenter, and he loves to build things. He loves the feeling, I've talked to him about it, of what it feels like to put something together. He used to build houses and all sorts of things. And I like the feeling of when something like that comes together. When I'm able to make the allegory work, the characters work, the payoffs worked, there's a real build there. You set up a little mystery at the beginning that builds and pays off and nobody was expecting it. There's no greater satisfaction than having someone read or experience that and be like, oh yeah, that's a different sort of, it's a higher level of satisfaction for me, I think.
So then who are some of your influences then? So then who are some of the influences that have come along and that you have really, like, maybe pulled elements from, or if there is maybe let's say a show in the last 5 or 10 years that you've said, wow, that's the type of writing I want to do, something along those lines.
I mean, I think when I first got into it, I think for me, I really like drama mystery. I just like drama. I've always been interested in my own internal mystery, and I like mystery. So when Lost hit the air, Lost just captured my imagination, because it was driven by a singular question that I don't know if was ever really answered or was answered to the satisfaction of the audience. But they set up a question that was so compelling that you just had to know. And so, that the showrunners were Damon Lindelof and J.J. Abrams. And, people who do that, those shows that are really there's a show on Apple TV called Servant, M. Night Shyamalan.
Very good program. Yeah, very good show.
Yeah, these shows that are kind of driven by questions, I really like that style of storytelling, and it influences me a lot. So, I think that those are the sort of the show. And then Damon Lindelof had a show that he came out with in the 2010s, mid 2010s, called The Leftovers, which again was
HBO
driven by
show. Yeah.
Really interesting question. What is it? 3% of the world's population disappeared one day, right? And it wasn't even, what I loved about that show is it wasn't even about the question itself. Where did they go? Which was driving the narrative, but it was about the experience of those who were left behind, right? Which I just thought was so smart, like that. And if you read anything I've ever written, someone goes missing in everything I've ever written. And it's true. I've been in a writer's group for 5 years in LA, and everyone's like, there's no one missing in the script. Like, something's wrong. You need to go back and start this with, but, or sometimes it's a group of people, but there's this absence I'm exploring inside. And so I think people who can entertain me, but also get me to explore these things, these deep questions, that's what really moves me. So yeah, definitely Lost always captured my imagination. And then, Damon, I don't know, maybe 8 years later when he dropped, and Tom Perrotta, I think, who wrote the book, dropped The Leftovers, I was really taken by that mythology and sort of what it was saying. And yeah.
So building upon that, we've had as your friends, we certainly follow your work and the different things that you've done. And we've had a chance to see many of your different clips, including The Last Night, which we mentioned earlier. But, when you think about the works that inspired you, what are some of those things that, that you're really proud of, or where you were able to take that idea, that feel, that approach, and bring it into your work and create something where you got that kind of a feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything I write is like a little, I think, like I said earlier, it's like acting. It's always just a journey closer and closer and closer to me. Each one is just, and so, with The Last Night, that was a little love letter, goodbye letter to New York. It was, and it really, it's kind of vulnerable to talk about, because I'll just be quite honest with you. I was living in New York City in 2016, and I was, I don't know, whatever I was at the time, in my mid to late 30s. And I don't want to take anyone's experience away from them. But I was looking at particularly, men and women and older actors in New York. And I was looking at the lives that they led and sort of the arc, and I just had this terrible fear of living in a studio apartment my whole life, and never having a family, and never I don't know. There's something about the arc of kind of, being alone with my art my whole life that I just didn't, and I wanted to, and that was the fear that I had. And I felt like if I stayed in New York, I felt like maybe that's where it was going. And so, The Last Night was, which I am very proud of, was an attempt to say goodbye, and also to kind of honor what can be a very singular existence of the artist, can be, and quite sad and quite lonely. You go to a show, if you do a play or you do a movie, you have these intense connections with people, and then they're just gone, and you may never talk to them ever again. So it was this real meditation on this kind of this fear of this deeper loneliness, and also longing to sort of, create a family of my own, have a little bit more physical space, some more opportunity.
So you moved to California, and you wanted to pursue something different, acting on a different level, basically. Is that right?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of move into TV writing. I wanted to deepen my script consulting and my coaching. And I mean, it wasn't like, everyone's like, go to LA when you get a job. I was just going because it was a vibe. I was just chasing a vibe.
I mean, is it what you were seeking? I mean, what are the drastic differences between LA and New York within the industry, et cetera, et cetera?
I think that, they always say wherever you go, there you are. I mean, I'm still there. It's still me when I wake up every morning. But I do think that, when I lived in New York, it was, I was never an East Coast. It was a little bit of a pose, have my blazers, and now I live in LA. It just feels a little
flip-flops.
I think I'm a little bit more of a flip-flops.
Pants every other day.
I remember going out to dinner in LA when I first moved there and just being shocked at how casual everybody was dressed. I was like offended. I was like, what? Who are these people? But,
nice.
Someone explained it to me this way. And for me, it was about, I wanted space. I wanted just more, and I have it. I live in a bigger space. I have access to more space. My mother lives out in Palm Springs, so I get a chance to travel to see her and see family out there. There's more travel in my life. There's just more expansiveness. So in my experience, it has really, it was the next step in a journey towards myself.
And what about the industries themselves in terms of the auditions, the projects? I mean, how different are the scenes in that regard?
Well, without for fear of offending anybody, but I'll just say it: everybody's really attractive in Los Angeles. It's just true. You just go from being like the pretty, like the damn pretty, and now you're just like kind of an average dude. Like there's a lot of really. There's, you just, no matter how hot you think you are, there's 25,000 hotter more people. So that's a thing, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just, and I think if you, and again, I don't know if even attractive is the way to put it, but more to a look. I think if you watch New York-based shows, there's much more character actors, people with, I don't want to call anybody ugly, but there's more character actors, people with more, and in LA, there's a little bit more of the chiseled, petite sort of, so I think that's different in the two industries. And then I think no matter what anybody tells you, unless you're going out there with a lot of heat, which I kept waiting to happen, going out there with heat behind me, you kind of have to start over.
Interesting.
Yeah, but there's a difference though between. I'm always reminded of the Larry Moss story. Larry Moss was great acting teacher, and he was working with a young talent and beautiful girl, and she did the scene, and he was like, you know what? Another pretty girl just got off the bus. Like, that's not good enough, basically. Like if you don't have that training, Nick, I just feel like the prettiness out in LA, like it's not going to do you much good though, is it?
I mean, I like to not comment on the state of the industry because I think it's real easy to fall into like the actor bitter traps. I feel like, particularly nowadays, and thankfully nowadays, I'll just speak for me. It's a little kind of tangential, but I love watching shows with non-traditional leads. I just really enjoy shows with non-traditionally looking. They just feel more, whatever. They feel more resonant to me, all different kinds. And I'm really thankful that we're moving towards a way more inclusive television that we're watching because we get to see more real people. But yeah, a friend of mine also said to me, she said, once I stopped trying to be the prettiest girl in the room in LA, my career took off. So,
there you go.
I do think, again, and it goes back to my theme, which is it's a journey to you, I mean, we don't rob. I don't think how you look, it robs you of, you get to have that whatever, and some people are very attractive and they get to have a great journey to them. And, sometimes it's the best of both worlds for casting who might be looking for a more traditionally quote unquote attractive person.
So Nick, we've talked a bit about the process of that you've gone through, whether it be the acting process and now that you've moved to writing and even your own personal journey from New York to LA to kind of, I guess, let's say clear your mind and figure out and maybe find a new space in your journey. So the industry as a whole now, how would you view the industry currently? Because there are so many more avenues to create art, right? There's obviously so many more streaming platforms. The movie industry has changed. The television atmosphere has changed. How do you see the media landscape now?
Well, I mean, it's not perfect, that's for sure, right?
But was it ever? I mean, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But was it ever?
Yeah, no. I mean, no. I mean, I think the sentiment towards everything that we're doing to make, like I said, television look more like what we see out in the world is though all of those intentions feel great to me. The execution of it sometimes is a little wonky, but the intention is I think correct. Like I said, whatever it is, whether it's more inclusive, let's get more non-traditional leads. Let's get I think that's right, and I think we're seeing that. Shows with, inclusive shows, non-traditional narratives, like they're getting picked up and people love it. So I think that's all correct. Sometimes the execution's a little wonky, but, execution's wonky in a lot of industries.
So I know you said before that you prefer the writing at this point. So is that where you've kind of now, say, put most of your energy in at this moment? Or you still want to act?
I mean, I think that my days are... I wake up and I try and wake up at 5:30 a.m. I try and write from 6:30 to 7:30 every morning. So writing is how I start my day. So in terms of my intention, I think about my intention. So writing starts my day, but then I'll get, one or two self tapes, and then I'm shooting, then I'm trying to find someone to read with me and I'm breaking down a script. So I don't know. I don't know if I really have a say in it, but writing is kind of where my energy is. But my days still can become whatever, a Zoom callback for a commercial, and all of a sudden I'm acting, and I love acting that day, and I'm like, oh, acting is what I love. I mean, it changes. It just changes. I have a call with one of my writing mentors, and we're talking about an idea or a story, and I'm like, oh, writing is what I love. It's just, I don't know. It's different every day. Coaching is what I love.
It's a nice way to live, actually.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, it's just different.
So do you want to direct it all? Because I mean, obviously you've done some shorts, but you talk a lot about, and maybe we haven't asked you the right question there too. Is that obviously you talk a great deal about how much you enjoy writing, how much you enjoy your acting as well, obviously. But do you want to do more behind the camera work?
My goal really is to show run. So
Right.
Showrun is a show's overall manager, right?
An executive producer, so to speak.
You're doing well, yeah. I mean, and you have sort of writing and non-writing EPs, but I want to be a creator writing EP. That doesn't, in that instance, maybe I do direct an episode, maybe I direct, but I mostly would be bringing the directors in, filling that roster of that. So I'm not trying to position myself as sort of an auteur. I'm not trying to, I'm not. Although I love The Last Night and everything I did, I'm not trying to come in as, the Safdie brothers. Or I'm not trying to, that's not the angle I'm coming at. I'd much rather would be, like I said, someone like Damon Lindelof, Ryan Murphy, Anna DuVernay, someone like that, where I oversee a lot of shows. Potentially I do direct one, but I'm higher level concepts, ideas, pitching season long or multiple season long arcs is where I sort of see myself.
Talk about working with some of your, acting heroes, like a Gary Oldman, for instance. Like, talk about working with these big, because I can't imagine walking into these rooms and you're their peer now, and you have to make this scene sing and dance. You worked with Gary Oldman on Mank. I'm sure there's other people that you've run into where you're just like, this is a mountain of an actor, and I get to work with them. How cool is that?
Again, it's so weird because I mean, definitely Gary, that's a thing. That's a thing. It's different than a lot of names you see on call sheets on TV shows and stuff like that. But and there was a day where I don't know if I told you this later, but there's a day where there was a call sheet. We were rehearsing this thing, and it was just me, my name, Gary's name, and David Fincher's name, and it went out. So it was, and
your heart skipped a beat at least, right?
I guess they say there are certain things that we're all kind of gifted with that we can't cultivate, we can't go pick up, we just kind of have. And somehow I have a certain chillness when I get in those spaces. I don't know how I got it. Hey, maybe it comes from meeting Jim Kelly when I was 5 or 4, or being around, being the ball boy for the St. Louis Rams and meeting those guys when I was a kid, and this idea that this equanimity amongst people, and we're just all human beings, I don't know, for some reason I have what are they, preternatural, or whatever you say that word, chill. I have a chill vibe that comes about me amongst people of those statures, which is great because I could easily fumble, it up, but I just get chiller in those moments. They used to say Michael Jordan would get more relaxed in the last 30 seconds of the game. I just get chiller in those settings, and it's just nothing anybody could ever give me. It's just something I just got. I don't know. I'm grateful for it.
So you mentioned Gary. Who are a few of the other, big stars that you've had a chance to work alongside? That was a little bit of a chill thrill, if we phrase it that way.
Well, I was just doing in my mind. See, can someone Google for me?
Is it gonna name drop?
Yeah, because I had her name and then I lost it.
Let's get all the proper name drops right in place here.
Shall we go to Billions? Shall we take a look at Billions?
Yeah, well, I had
Damon Lewis?
I had a scene with the woman who plays Wendy Rhodes. I couldn't think of her name.
Maggie Siff?
Thank you.
Maggie Siff.
Scene with her.
Yes.
And also Danny Strong, who's a really large showrunner. He showruns Empire and a number of different Fox shows. And they were, super great, super gracious. I mean, gracious.
Didn't you have to drive a car in front of Gary Oldman and you had no idea how to use it or something?
I had to drive a car with Gary laying on it a car that, as I was told, was close to a $500,000 car. I think it was a Packard 1920s, and they were like, "Oh, it's no big deal. It's just a $330,000 car."
Oh,
and they're
geez.
like, "Oh," and Gary's going to be laying on the back of it, just laying across it. And I was like, "No, that'll be fine." And I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if I hit the clutch wrong or whatever, he's on the ground. Like that's the show.
Wow.
Killed Gary Oldman.
The whole feature is the whole feature is going to get pushed,
Yes.
like because of me. So I was, they had me in rehearsing in that. I think it was a Packard. I don't think it was a Rolls Royce. I think it was a Packard. They had me rehearsing on that for can we get you come drive it again? I was like, yeah, please. Me drive it a couple times, but
And you have to like hit a mark, right? It's like a very specific.
That's that story.
thing,
Yeah.
right?
So the thing is that David, as I understand it, doesn't like to use stunt players for things that actors could do. He wants more of the actor in it. So, I played a character named John Gilbert in Mank, and there was a scene that it didn't get featured as much. I don't know if it was different in the original versions, but John Gilbert was a part of Mankiewicz's life. And so there was a scene where we were coming back from a drunken hangout, dropping him off at the train station. And yeah, they wanted me to pull. I was at I think it was the Glendale train station. They wanted me to pull around a circle and stop the front tire on a piece of tape. And
Good luck.
and I'm like, and so I'm like in costume and da da da, and then also like act like you're gonna be in the frame and they're gonna use a little whatever. So I'm doing this, and the stunt coordinator's like, "You got it, man. You're gonna be fine." And I am not hitting this tape. I'm not. I just keep not hitting the tape. And it's not one of those things where they say anything to you. It's just like Dave Fincher and Messerschmitt, the DP Eric Messerschmitt, they look at each other and they're sort of like, what are we going to do about this guy?
This is a problem.
This is a problem. And I'm watching and I'm like, is this the end of my day? Is this the end of my time?
They're going to send you home because you can't park.
Yeah, and internally, I'm like getting so angry because I'm like, I'm not supposed to be able to do this. I'm an actor, not a stunt player. Like having a whole inner narrative. And Gary's in the back seat, and Gary's like, "You're doing great, man. Like, don't worry about it. You're gonna be fine." And the woman who's playing Greta Garbo is like, "You're doing great." And she even said to me, she goes, "You're being very chill about this." Again, that chill, I got gifted with a chill somehow, but they were not happy. And it wasn't just them. It was everybody on the camera unit being like, "Oh God, here he goes again.
This freaking guy."
Yeah. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm doing like the production budget for each mark I miss. I'm like, oh, that was a fucking $15,000 mark miss.
It's not your money.
I just like racking it up over and over again. And yeah, I got real. I was saying an inner prayer. I was like, God, please let me hit this mark. God, please let me hit this mark. And Gary said a couple nice things. You got this. And then at some point, I hit it. I hit the mark. And there was no like great job. They were just like, cool. We can like cool. They moved on to worrying about other things, different things, right? And there was no like, but the stunt coordinator did come over and he's like, dude, you got it. That was great too. Whatever you just did, da, 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 da. So I started getting it. But at first I was like, oh man, this is my moment. I'm with Fincher. I'm with Oldman. These guys are never going to have me back.
How many takes? How many takes? 4, 12, 70?
So David Fincher is known for a lot of takes. I think we did that setup over 40 times.
Wow.
Oh, God.
Damn.
Oh, my God.
So hold on. So you want to be an actor, kids?
Yeah,
Wow.
40
it
times.
was and then he joked with me at dinner afterwards. He was like, see, now you're like a stunt driver. That's part of you could do it, and I'm like,
Wait, who joked with you for dinner?
Fincher did.
Oh, did, all right.
You
He was like,
expanded your resume.
now you can do that. And I was like, yeah, that was a lot. That was a big. We're all buddy, but we're laughing now. 5 hours ago, and the Glendale sun was beating on my forehead too. It was just sweating.
And as an actor, you just have to deal with it. Whatever the situation is, you just got to get the shot. I mean, that's what it's all about. I can't let you go. You've been very gracious with your time, and we thank you so much because these are great stories. I can't let you go. You told me the other night about what was called a life cast, and I need you to tell this story because this is what the trials and tribulations of an actor. You face things like this, and so tell people what a life cast is.
Without
and
getting
what
too
that's
much
all about.
into like what the project was or whatever, because
Yes.
But yeah, recently was asked to get a life cast, and I thought it was going to be real cool, right? Like I was picturing, Thriller and all the cool guys sitting in the makeup chair. I'm like, it's going to be great, man. It's going to be cool.
So it's not a broadcast; it's a body cast.
It's a cast of your face they do different one of your face, of your skull, and. I got there and they were just like so nice to me. I didn't know. Now I know why they were so nice to me. Welcome. Have you ever done this before? Like, it's going to be great. Don't worry. You're going to be fine. I was like, oh, this is great. And I told them, I'm like, I'm a meditator. I meditate all the time. They're like, are you claustrophobic? I was like, psh, me, come on, claustrophobic. And they're like, you're going to be great, man. You're going to go to your own internal space.
Oh my God. This sounds terrible already.
I need an internal space. Right? I don't even know what an internal space is.
Yeah, it's you really want to, it's like you really, and then you just, as you get closer and closer, they put the like the bald cap on you because they're going to do the whole thing. And it's just starting to get a little bit, the vibe gets different in the room. You're like, wait a second. It sort of feels like you're about to go under for surgery. Like they're talking to you kind of like that. It's going to be okay.
And what are you wearing as this is going on? I think I know the answer, but
they had me I think shirtless because the whole cast had to go around this.
Okay.
So and then they had a ball cap on me, and then
but you're wearing pants.
Yeah.
Okay.
It had to go around essentially your torso. You're saying.
It was all here. So they it's 3 layers. I'm sorry, 2 or 3 layers of silicone. All you need is one. All you need is one to know that. Yes, you are claustrophobic. No, you don't have an internal space that works well for you.
Oh my God.
And 3, is this the moment that I'm gonna die? Will I die in Chatsworth at a special effects house? Is this my obituary? Like, is this the last line of my obituary? He died in a chair at a special effects house in Chatsworth, California.
So the life cast was. Do you have this life cast? Where is this life cast?
No, I didn't. They used it in the show. I didn't get to keep it. It looked, I personally, it looked good. I mean, it looked great. I mean, it was cool. But it will be in this thing that I did. It'll be a part of that. I can't say too much about it because I don't want to let in any of the storytelling elements of it. But it is. I was. So the 2 layers of silicone, then they put a layer of plaster on. And what that does is that flattens anything your mouth is doing to where it's stuck at.
Oh, geez.
So your mouth is gone, right? And you go from can't see, can't hear much to can't hear at all. All you do is breathe through your nostrils. So they're talking really loud to you, and they said, take her hand. The one girl, she's holding my hand. Just squeeze her hand. And they're like, you're almost there. We're 5 minutes away from starting to pull it off. You're almost, just breathe through your nose. And I don't know if that's what hyperventilating is or whatever, but there was like, I'll tell you, there's a moment right when that plaster sets on your mouth where the first thought is, oh my God, take this off me. Oh my God. And you can't.
God, that sounds so terrible.
Your first feeling is, oh my God, rip me out of this. And that's the internal feeling, but you can't. And I'll tell you, man, they took it off me. How was it? And I said, that was not nothing. That's what I said. It's not nothing.
And how long is it? And how long did that whole thing? Take?
I think it's 25 minutes from the moment.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Yeah. The moment the silicone first goes on to that, it's about 25.
Oh
minutes.
my God!
And they're talking you. They're talking you through it.
If you make it to that point, your acting career is done right there. I would walk away and be like, that's it, I'm never doing it again.
I like see breakdowns sometimes where they're like, will and require like life casts, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I can do it again. It's actually funny. I saw something that was required a lot of makeup and definitely a life cast. And I somehow recently I was like reached out to my agent. I was like, you should make sure I give me in on this. And I'm like, who are you, man? Like I'm like now you look at somebody like Doug Jones.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Doug Jones, who spent his entire career in makeup. He was the monster in the water in the Guillermo del Toro thing was A Shape of Water. He was the amphibious creature in that. He's been the monster in all the Star Trek things. I mean, he's lived his life in those life
What about
casts.
Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca? I can't imagine what that process was like.
Dude. I have a whole newfound respect for that. And anytime I see a show where a life cast was used, I'm like, man, that motherfucker went through that. Like he went, even it's like some big star. I'm like, that motherfucker's sad for that. Like, it was not easy.
Nick, I guess, building upon that, aside from, if you're talking to a young aspiring actor, aside from telling them to avoid life casts with all you possibly can, with every fiber of your being, what advice would you give to a young person trying to break into the business today? And I guess it's sort of a broad question because you do so many different things, but if somebody wanted to get into the theatrical field or get into acting, what guidance would you give them?
I mean, I think getting into a really good class with a good teacher is definitely the place to start because I think that what we think is that the journey is outward. The journey is about situations and, if they only saw me, if they just saw my face, I'm going to get discovered on the street. But I really think it's a journey inwards. I think that if you work on the internal life and knowing, that Anthony Hopkins talks about, I think it was Hopkins. I don't want to, call him, but he talks about, how did you get so great at acting? Spent time in getting sober and recovered and tons of years in therapy. That's how I got great at acting. So I'm not saying it has to be that, but I think whatever teacher, whatever experience is going to get you closer to you, and also no job is going to give you value. You have to work on your own value. No one's going to, as I've said to Lair, one of my favorite anecdotes is a lot of people say one of the most depressing moments of their career is winning the Oscar because it doesn't make them feel the way they thought it was going to make them feel. Right. So, I would say to a young artist, get happy without career success, work on your own value without external value, and then all the external stuff will come.
So is it better to be Tom Cruise, or is it better to be, let's say, a Stephen Tobolowsky, a guy who does tons of movies? He works all the time, but not everybody knows who he is. And then obviously Tom Cruise, everybody knows who he is.
Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day. Right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Stephen Tobolowsky. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there you go, right there, right? He wrote a book called That Guy. I'm That Guy.
Oh, okay, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I don't know better, I always take a very sort of spiritual vibe on this, man. There's an unlimited amount of roles. Roles are abundant. Everyone has the journey they're supposed to have in acting. I bet both those guys wouldn't trade in their journey for the world. I bet guys who toiled and never got a series regular and then got one, when they're in their mid-50s, wouldn't trade their journey for anything in the world.
But isn't there, let's say there's a little bit of difference, right? Like, obviously, everybody on the planet knows who Tom Cruise is, so he can't walk through a mall without getting mobbed. The same can't be said for, let's say, an actor, for, let's say, another smaller, a smaller actor who, let's say, works a lot, but is not as well known.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know anybody with that level of fame, but from tangentially, I think that it's probably quite a burden to be that recognizable. Like the idea that any moment you are awake, any second, 10,000 people are talking about you and maybe 500 are tweeting about you. I think that could rile my nervous system to a point. I don't know if I can handle that, quite frankly. That's a lot of visibility. The thing we underestimate, being visible like that can be very hard on your emotional life, that visible. So, I don't know. I think that a lot of people say they want that level of fame. I think it would be hard. I think it could be hard on a person without a lot in place to sort of center them. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think that each one wouldn't trade their journey for the world. You know, I think Tom probably loves his journey, but I think some days it might be hard to wake up knowing 10,000 people are tweeting about you all at once. You know, you get dragged on Twitter by 500,000 people in one day. I don't know. I think that's probably a tough day.
Yeah, I think I would find that unpleasant. However, when I think about the futures of this podcast, I hope that starts very, very soon. I encourage all of you to follow us on Twitter at the Fellows NWC. So, you know, with that, Nick, what are some of the projects that you have going on that you can talk about, or some of the different things that you're doing that you want people to know about?
Yeah, I just did this fully improvised feature film called Sit Down, Stand Up, where I played sort of a down on his luck comedian, which was really, really fun. So that it's an indie feature. So that should be really cool once they get it done. Sort of an interesting project. And then, yeah, this thing that I'm on HBO Max, I don't even know. I think it still has a code name, man. They make them, all these things have code names. It'll come out eventually. You'll see me in it. You know, that's the worst plug ever. It's something.
I just pictured a QR code.
But, you know,
Is it Peacemaker season 2?
Yeah.
That's a great show.
I got a nice chunky scene in there, and I mean, that's it. You know, I'm a script consultant. You know, I call myself Page One. So I work with a lot of writers, which is something that I've been doing for just years. I was sort of self-taught in that, and then I got a lot more skills working. I have a lot of sort of higher level, senior level writers who are mentors of mine. I try and bring that knowledge to people through something that I coach and consult. So,
and the website,
that's really it.
Your website where people can check out some of your work.
My coaching website is pageonetv.com, and then just nickjob.com, which just has, you know, my headshots. You can see my different looks, the mustaches, the beard.
Yes, he's very handsome. Very handsome.
I do fancy myself a chameleon. So, you know,
So you go from handsome to less handsome? Is that how that works?
Some casting offices think of me as a Wall Street douchebag. Some think of me as a mobster. You know, it's good. Some people think of me as a love interest. Different days, different moments of the day. I'm somewhere in between.
I think of you as a Rams fan. How's that?
Hey, man.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck with everything you're working on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, once again, another interesting conversation. Larry Shea, thank you so much for bringing that to us. And, you know, my initial takeaway from that entire journey that we just went through is that perhaps acting isn't as much fun as I thought it might be, because I got to be honest with you, I do not want to have a life cast made of myself.
Ever in my life.
Yeah, that's
I'm not.
Yeah, it's a horrifying story. Let's be honest with each other. If my acting career wasn't over, you know, then it would have been the moment they sat me in a life cast chair. That's damn
I
sure.
understand you get paid a lot of money. There's not enough money to pay me to do that. That would freak me out.
So many good lessons, though, right? I mean, Nick really knocks it out of the park when it comes to like all of the things that it takes to do what he did. You know, working on yourself. You know, letting it go with the audition process, right? How about just doing the audition and then never thinking about it? And if you get the part, you get the part, but not worrying about it. There are so many great lessons here. Go to class, learn your craft. And again, we talk about it on almost every episode. Like when that door is cracked open for you, you got to have the skills to go in there and do the job, or you're not going to make it. You know, you got to be able to take it to that next level and perform, because it's all about performance, especially when it comes to the acting field.
The one thing that I was very pleased to hear was him kind of throwing back the curtain a little bit and telling us about the tedium of making, you know, whether it be television or movies, because, you know, obviously we all see the finished product, and, you know, watching Jaws over 2.5 hours seems awesome. But the reality is that, yeah, there's about, you know, you're driving a car around a parking lot 57 times or, you know, 100 times, hitting the, you know, trying to hit that mark or not hitting that mark, and then everyone groaning and going back to one. So, yeah, it's kind of funny to hear that story over and over and over again. And then, you know, every once in a while, especially if you want to make that next step into being a writer and a creator, and then saying to yourself, oh my God, you know, you're taking on the next level and saying, wow, how much does me screwing up cost us every single time I screw up. That's funny to me. That's very, very funny to me.
It's not playtime. It seems like it's playtime, but it's not playtime. It's a job, it's work, it's industry, and it's hard. You know, the big thing that I took away from the conversation was something that it kind of made me think. You know, Nick was talking about the audition process and what he learned over the years. Now you have to look inside and dig deep and really figure out who you are and have that person come out when you are auditioning or acting or doing anything. And, you know, it made me think about, I always used to joke that Matt Damon is the same character in every single movie. He doesn't do anything differently, but in reality, he's doing exactly what Nick said. He is being himself, and that is the character, and that is the person that's supposed to be coming across in the things that he does, and that's what we like. So that really, really, really connected with me.
Yeah, accept who you are and bring it forward, I think is how he kind of explains that too, right?
Yep.
And I do love the stuff he says about, like, you know, you can sit there and fret about what you're doing career-wise in life. And so he goes to this hotel and sets up and he's going over his lines. And then he does it and it's 3 takes and he nails the scene and he says to himself, what was I worried about? I think that was the Yellowstone project that just aired that he couldn't, you know, he didn't want to talk about. So it is interesting that, you know, there's a certain ease about Nick and a certain way that he kind of goes about his career that makes it comfortable, right? Like for me, acting was so uncomfortable. It was a lot of being out of my element. And you just get the feeling from Nick that he's completely in his element when he's doing this work.
I'll say this is that now I feel like he's stretching himself. And that's what I felt. He really felt excited about the writing portion of what he's now moving forward in his career at this point. I'm very excited because I've seen his shorts. So he can write for sure, and I'm very excited to see what the next portion of his career, of his career becomes, because I think that he'll be a hell of a writer for some show or some movie in the future,
without question. And it's just great to see somebody work so hard, discover where they fit, discover who they are, and how they want to express themselves. And Nick has really, really figured that out. So we thank Nick for joining us today. Make sure you check him out on the Secret Writer Podcast. We also thank you for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices. Please be sure to follow us on your favorite podcasting platform or join the conversation by visiting our website at NoWrongChoices.com and our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, which can be found by searching for No Wrong Choices. On behalf of Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea, I'm Larry Samuels, and we are the Fellas.